Through the garage window, I watched Linda's silver BMW reverse out of our driveway with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Even her driving had become calculated, efficient, cold. When had that happened? When had my wife stopped being the woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and started being this polished stranger who scheduled our conversations like business meetings? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Linda's contact. The photo still showed her from 3 years ago. Genuine smile, hair slightly messy from a weekend hike we'd taken together. Now she looked like she'd stepped out of a corporate brochure. Every strand of her auburn hair perfectly positioned, every outfit coordinated to project success and authority. My thumb hovered over the call button. What would I say? "Hey, honey, our daughter just accused you of having an affair with your ex-boyfriend. Care to explain?" Instead, I shoved the phone back in my pocket and returned to the truck's engine. The carburetor needed rebuilding, just like everything else in my life that was falling apart while I pretended not to notice. But Jessica's words kept echoing in my head. Rick's place. Not seeing Rick or talking to Rick, Rick's place. That implied a level of familiarity that made my stomach clench like a fist. I'd known Rick since high school too. He'd been the quarterback when I was getting my face rearranged in the boxing ring after school. Even then, he'd had that smug confidence that came from never having to work for anything. His father owned the original car lot. Rick just inherited the empire and expanded it with the kind of aggressive sales tactics that made honest mechanics like me look like relics from a simpler time. The garage door creaked as I rolled it up to let in some fresh air. Washing away the evidence of her evening with Rick, no doubt. When she finally slid into bed beside me, she smelled like expensive soap and shampoo, not the brands we kept in our bathroom. Even her post-affair routine had been carefully planned to avoid detection. "How was your evening?" she whispered, probably checking to see if I was awake. I kept my breathing steady and didn't respond. Let her think I was the same oblivious husband who'd gone to bed alone for the 1,000th time. Let her believe she was still in control of this situation. But tomorrow, I was going to start changing the rules of her game. And Linda Castellano, because that's apparently who she'd been for the past 4 years, was about to discover that even the most patient man had limits. The last thing I heard before drifting off to sleep was her phone buzzing with a text message. Not the burner phone, her regular phone. But I already knew who it was and what it said. "Thanks for tonight. Same time next Thursday." 4 years of Thursday nights. 4 years of lies. 4 years of being the fool. But not anymore. The next morning arrived with the kind of crisp October sunshine that made everything look deceptively normal. Linda was already gone when I woke up. Another early meeting, according to the note she'd left on the kitchen counter. Her handwriting was as precise and controlled as everything else about her new persona. Danny was eating cereal at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone with the focused concentration that only teenagers could manage before 8 a.m. "Dad, did you see Jessica's latest video?" he asked, without looking up from his screen. My stomach dropped. But every few minutes, I'd catch myself wondering what Linda was really doing, who she was really with, how long this had been going on before I'd discovered the truth. Around 4 p.m., my old friend Mike stopped by the shop. We'd boxed together in high school, and he still carried himself like a fighter, even though his hairline had retreated and his waistline had expanded. "Heard Linda's doing real well at the law firm," he said, accepting a beer from the mini fridge I kept in the office. "Sarah saw her at that fancy restaurant downtown last week. Looked like she was celebrating something." My hand tightened around my own beer bottle. Which night was that? Thursday, I think. Sarah was there for her book club dinner. Mike took a swig of beer and continued. "She was with some guy in an expensive suit. Looked like a real smooth operator." Sarah's book club met on Thursday nights. Linda had been at a restaurant with Rick while I'd been home helping Danny with his algebra homework. "Did Sarah recognize the guy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Mike shrugged. She thought he looked familiar, but couldn't place him. You know how it is. All these business types look the same after a while. But I knew exactly who it was. Rick Castellano, with his perfectly styled hair and his collection of luxury cars, and his complete lack of conscience about destroying other people's marriages. "Everything okay, Tom?" Mike's voice carried the concern of someone who'd known me for 25 years. "You look like you've been hit by a truck." I almost laughed at the accuracy of the metaphor. "Just tired. Business has been busy." Mike nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Another person who'd noticed what I'd been too blind to see, that something was wrong with my marriage, my family, my entire life. After Mike left, I closed the shop early and drove home through the residential streets of Millfield. The houses looked the same as always, modest 2 stories with small yards and aging cars in the driveways. This was where I belonged, among people who worked with their hands and paid their bills on time and didn't pretend to be something they weren't. But Linda had outgrown this neighborhood, just like she'd outgrown me. Her BMW looked out of place in our driveway, like a thoroughbred in a stable full of workhorses. Jessica was in the kitchen when I walked in, filming another TikTok video. This one appeared to be about signs your parents are from different social classes. "Dad, you're ruining my lighting," she said without looking at me. "Sorry," I replied automatically, then caught myself. When had I started apologizing for existing in my own house? "Where's your mother?" I asked. "Working late again, duh." Jessica rolled her eyes with the practiced disdain of a teenager who'd learned that disrespecting her father was not only acceptable, but entertaining to her online audience. I watched her perform for the camera, and suddenly I saw Linda in every gesture, every expression. The same calculated charm, the same awareness of her audience, the same ability to present a carefully crafted version of herself while hiding her true motivations. "How long has your mother been working these late nights?" I asked. Jessica finally looked at me, and for a moment I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. "I don't know, a long time." Everyone could see the changes in me except me. "Just dealing with some things," I said. She nodded knowingly. "Marriage is hard work, especially when people grow in different directions." She paused, then added, "My Harold and I went through a rough patch in our 30s. I thought we might not make it." "What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I stopped pretending everything was fine and started demanding the truth," she said simply. "Turned out Harold was gambling away our savings at the casino. Not another woman, thank goodness, but still a betrayal." "How did you find out?" "Our neighbors saw him there and told me." I was furious at first, at Harold for lying and at the neighbor for knowing something I didn't. But then I realized the neighbor was trying to help me, not hurt me. Mrs. Patterson's story hit uncomfortably close to home. How many people in our neighborhood knew about Linda's affair? How many had been trying to find a way to tell me without destroying my world? "What did you do?" I asked. I confronted him with evidence. Bank statements, credit card receipts, witness accounts. I didn't give him a chance to lie his way out of it. Her voice grew firm with the memory. "And I made it clear that if he ever deceived me again, I'd take everything and leave him with nothing." Did it work? Harold never gambled again, but more importantly, he never lied to me again. Sometimes people need to see consequences before they understand the value of honesty. After Mrs. Patterson continued her walk, I stood in my driveway looking at our house. The windows glowed with warm light, creating the illusion of a happy home. But illusions were all I had left of my marriage. I felt like a character in a bad detective movie, but the situation was real enough. At 7:15, Linda's BMW pulled into the parking lot. She emerged looking stunning, a black dress I'd never seen before, jewelry that caught the streetlights, hair and makeup that had clearly required professional attention. She looked like she was going to a gala, not a work meeting. Rick's Mercedes arrived 5 minutes later. He stepped out wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, and I watched him hand his keys to the valet with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never worried about money. They met at the restaurant entrance with a kiss that lasted longer than any greeting between old friends should last. Through my camera lens, I captured the moment when my wife's face lit up with genuine happiness, an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in years. I photographed them being seated at a corner table, Linda laughing at something Rick said, their hands touching across the table. They looked like lovers celebrating an anniversary, not co-conspirators hiding an affair. The worst part was seeing how natural they looked together. Linda's corporate polish matched Rick's expensive confidence in a way that my blue-collar authenticity never could. They inhabited the same world of luxury restaurants and designer clothes and casual entitlement that I'd never been able to provide. I stayed for 2 hours, documenting their dinner with the thoroughness of a forensic photographer. Every laugh, every touch, every intimate moment was captured in high-resolution detail. By the time they left, separately, with Rick departing first and Linda following 10 minutes later, I had enough evidence to prove their affair to anyone who cared to see it. But proof of the affair wasn't enough. She'd already proven that she was comfortable lying to my face for years. What would stop her from continuing to lie, or from finding new ways to deceive me? I needed to think bigger. Linda had built her deception on the assumption that I was too trusting, too passive, too comfortable to challenge her narrative. She'd counted on my love for her and my commitment to our family to keep me from asking difficult questions. But love without honesty wasn't love at all. It was just comfortable delusion, and I was done being comfortable with being deceived. I opened a new document on my computer and began typing. Evidence file. Linda Morrison extramarital affair. Duration: approximately 4 years. Confirmed. Primary location: Thursday evenings, occasional weekends. Co-conspirator: Rick Castellano. Additional evidence: fraudulent billing at law firm, burner phone, hotel receipts. This wasn't just about catching my wife in an affair anymore. This was about reclaiming my dignity, protecting my son from further emotional damage, and teaching my daughter that actions had consequences. Linda had spent 4 years carefully managing her image and controlling the narrative of our marriage. But every story had more than one narrator, and I was about to start telling my version of events. Friday morning brought an unexpected text from Linda. Working from home today, not feeling well. I found her in our bedroom, still in her pajamas, looking genuinely unwell. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old concern I used to feel when she was sick. Then I remembered where she'd spent the previous night, and the sympathy evaporated. "Rough evening at the office?" I asked, setting a cup of tea on her nightstand. She looked up at me with what appeared to be genuine gratitude. "Thank you." "Yes, we worked until almost 2 a.m. I'm exhausted." The lie came so easily, so naturally, that I almost admired her skill. She had 4 years to perfect her deception, and she'd become a master at it. "Maybe you should take it easy this weekend," I suggested. "Spend some time with the kids." "That sounds wonderful," she said, snuggling deeper into the blankets. "I feel like I've been so busy lately that I've missed too much family time." Family time? She'd missed Danny's school play, Jessica's parent-teacher conference, and countless dinners because she was building her relationship with Rick. But now she wanted to play the devoted mother recovering from overwork. I left her to rest and drove to my shop, where I spent the morning working on Mrs. Chen's Honda and thinking about my next move. The evidence I'd gathered was comprehensive, but evidence was only useful if you knew how to deploy it effectively. Linda's weakness was her image. She'd worked hard to build a reputation as a successful lawyer, devoted mother, and pillar of the community. Her affair with Rick wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a professional liability that could destroy everything she'd worked to achieve. But I needed more than just proof of the affair. I needed leverage. Around noon, I drove to the courthouse and spent several hours researching Rick's business dealings. What I found was fascinating. Rick's car lots had been involved in several consumer fraud investigations over the past 2 years. Nothing that had resulted in criminal charges, but a pattern of complaints about odometer tampering, undisclosed accident damage, and predatory financing practices. More interesting was his personal financial situation. Despite his flashy lifestyle and expensive cars, Rick was leveraged to the hilt. His businesses carried massive debt loads, and his personal credit was stretched thin. The man who appeared so successful was actually one economic downturn away from bankruptcy. I also discovered that Rick was married. His wife, Patricia, was a real estate agent who specialized in luxury properties.
They had 2 young children and lived in a mansion that was mortgaged for twice its current value. So Rick wasn't just destroying my marriage, he was risking his own family's financial stability to maintain his affair with Linda. That kind of reckless behavior suggested a man who made decisions based on ego rather than logic. That evening, Linda felt well enough to join us for dinner. She made a show of asking about everyone's day, playing the role of the caring mother and interested wife. Jessica responded enthusiastically, clearly happy to have her mother's attention. Danny was more reserved, but he answered her questions politely. I watched the performance with new eyes, seeing how skillfully Linda managed each family member's expectations. She gave Jessica just enough validation to maintain her loyalty, showed Danny enough interest to keep him from feeling neglected, and treated me with the kind of casual affection that suggested everything was normal in our marriage. I was thinking we should plan a family vacation, Linda said as we cleared the dishes. Maybe somewhere warm for spring break. The kids could use a change of scenery. A family vacation? With money she was earning while defrauding her clients, planned around a schedule that included regular hotel meetings with her ex-boyfriend? That sounds expensive, I said carefully. I got a bonus last month, she replied smoothly.
Linda laughed at my jokes, asked about my day, showed genuine interest in my thoughts and opinions. It was a masterful performance of the wife she used to be, but I knew it was just a performance. The real Linda was already planning her next deception, her next excuse, her next betrayal. This moment of domestic harmony was just another tool in her manipulation toolkit. Jessica and Danny joined us for dinner, and we actually had a pleasant family meal. Linda was charming and attentive, Jessica was less focused on her phone than usual, and Danny seemed genuinely happy to have both parents present and engaged. It was the kind of evening that, 6 months ago, would have convinced me that our marriage was fundamentally sound despite its temporary challenges. Now I understood it was just Linda's way of maintaining control over the narrative. After dinner, Linda suggested we watch a movie together as a family. We settled on the couch, Linda cuddled against my side, the kids sprawled on the floor with bowls of popcorn. For 2 hours, we were the picture of domestic contentment. But I spent the entire movie thinking about Patricia Castellano's expression when she'd seen the photo of her husband kissing my wife. The shock, the hurt, the gradual hardening into determination. Linda had no idea that her carefully constructed world was about to collapse. She thought she was managing all the variables, controlling all the relationships, maintaining all the deceptions. She had no idea that the passive, trusting husband she'd been manipulating for 4 years was gone, replaced by someone who understood that love without honesty was just comfortable self-deception. It made her betrayal somehow worse. She could have had any life she wanted, but she'd chosen deception. "Thank you," she replied, checking her reflection one final time. "I want everything to be perfect for Dad." Perfect. Linda's entire life was built on the pursuit of perfection. The perfect career, the perfect image, the perfect family facade. But perfection was just another word for control, and control required constant management of other people's perceptions. Tonight, Linda was going to learn that some things couldn't be managed. The country club was decorated with understated elegance, white tablecloths, fresh flowers, soft lighting that made everyone look 10 years younger. Linda's extended family had gathered from across the state to celebrate her father's milestone birthday. Judge William Harrison was a man who commanded respect through competence rather than intimidation. He'd built his legal career on meticulous preparation and unwavering ethical standards, qualities that had earned him a reputation as one of the most principled jurists in Ohio. He was also a man who valued honesty above all else, which made him the perfect recipient for the envelope in my jacket pocket. Linda worked the room with practiced charm, introducing me to relatives I'd met dozens of times before, accepting compliments on her success, playing the role of the devoted daughter and accomplished professional. She was in her element, surrounded by people who admired her achievements and envied her apparent happiness. Jessica had come with us, dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than some people's monthly rent. She was filming discreet TikTok videos throughout the evening, documenting the aesthetic of old money and family traditions. You don't understand the pressures I've been under, the expectations. I understand perfectly, Judge Harrison interrupted. I understand that you made a choice to deceive everyone who trusted you. I understand that you've been living a double life while presenting yourself as a person of integrity. Linda's mother was crying openly now, her sobs drawing attention from other tables. Jessica had stopped filming and was staring at her mother with a mixture of shock and embarrassment. Mom? Jessica's voice was small, uncertain. Is this real? Linda reached for her daughter's hand, but Jessica pulled away. For the first time, my daughter was seeing her mother as something other than a successful role model. Jessica, sweetheart, sometimes adults make mistakes, Linda began. Mistakes? Judge Harrison's voice cut through her explanation like a blade. This wasn't a mistake, Linda. This was a calculated deception that lasted for years. He stood up, still holding the envelope. Tom, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'm sorry you had to endure this betrayal, and I'm sorry my daughter put you in this position. The formal apology, delivered in front of Linda's entire extended family, was more devastating than any angry outburst could have been. Judge Harrison was treating Linda's affair not as a private marital issue, but as a public breach of ethics that reflected on the entire family's reputation. Dad, please, Linda stood up, reaching for his arm. Can we discuss this privately? Judge Harrison looked down at his daughter's hand on his sleeve, then gently but firmly removed it. There's nothing to discuss, Linda. You've made your choices. But it was also the end of my marriage, the destruction of my children's family, the collapse of everything I'd once believed about the woman I'd loved. Judge Harrison approached me as the last of the guests filed out of the dining room. Tom, I want you to know that Linda's actions don't reflect the values this family stands for. You've shown more integrity tonight than my daughter has shown in 4 years. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. What will you do now? I looked around the empty dining room, at the abandoned party decorations and half-eaten birthday cake. I'm going to rebuild my life on a foundation of honesty instead of comfortable lies. Judge Harrison nodded approvingly. That's all any of us can do. As Jessica and I drove home in silence, I realized that the hardest part wasn't over. It was just beginning. Linda's public humiliation was satisfying, but it was only the first step in a much longer process of reconstructing my family's future. But for the first time in 4 years, I felt like I was moving forward instead of standing still while my life collapsed around me. The truth was finally out, and whatever came next would be built on honesty rather than deception. The drive home from the country club felt like traveling through a different universe. Jessica sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window in stunned silence. The confident, social media-savvy teenager who'd spent months mocking me online had been replaced by a confused girl who was finally seeing her family's reality without the filter of her mother's carefully constructed narrative. Dad, she said quietly as we pulled into our driveway, is Mom really having an affair? The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. For months, I'd been the target of Jessica's contempt, the embarrassing father who didn't measure up to her successful mother. Now she was asking me to explain the truth about the woman she'd idolized. Yes, I said simply, for 4 years. Jessica's face crumpled, and for the first time in years, she looked like the little girl who used to run to me for comfort when she was scared or hurt. But she always said she was working. She said she was building her career for our family. She was lying, sweetheart, to all of us. We sat in the truck for several minutes, neither of us ready to go inside and face the reality of what our family had become. The house looked the same as always, modest, comfortable, ordinary, but everything had changed. I made those videos about you, Jessica said suddenly. All those TikToks making fun of you for not being successful like Mom. Oh God, Dad, I'm so sorry. The apology hit me harder than I'd expected. My daughter's cruelty had been one of the most painful aspects of the past few months, but now I understood that she'd been manipulated just as thoroughly as I had. You didn't know, I said. Your mother is very good at making people believe what she wants them to believe. But I should have known. I should have seen. Jessica trailed off, probably thinking about all the signs she'd missed or ignored.
Danny was waiting for us in the kitchen, still in his pajamas despite it being nearly midnight. He took one look at our faces and understood that something fundamental had changed. "Where's Mom?" he asked. "She won't be coming home tonight," I said. "Maybe not for a while." Danny nodded as if he'd been expecting this answer. "Because of the affair?" Both Jessica and I stared at him in surprise. "You knew?" Jessica asked.
I suspected, Danny said quietly. Mom's been different for years. She stopped caring about our family stuff and started caring more about looking successful. And she was always checking her phone and smiling at messages that weren't from Dad. My 14-year-old son had been more perceptive than any of us had given him credit for. While I'd been willfully blind and Jessica had been distracted by social media fame, Danny had been quietly observing the disintegration of our family. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. Danny shrugged. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, Dad, I think Mom's cheating on you?" I hoped I was wrong. We stayed up until almost 3 a.m., talking about things we should have discussed years ago. Jessica deleted her TikTok account, claiming she was done performing for strangers. Danny admitted he'd been worried about our family for months, but hadn't known how to help. For the first time in years, we were having honest conversations instead of performing our assigned roles in Linda's carefully orchestrated family drama. Saturday morning brought a series of phone calls that made it clear the story of Linda's affair was spreading through Millfield's social networks with the speed of wildfire. Judge Harrison's birthday party had been attended by some of the most prominent families in the county, and none of them were known for their discretion. Mike called first. "Tom, I heard about last night. Are you okay?" "I'm better than I've been in years," I said, surprising myself with the honesty of the answer. "Sarah feels terrible about not saying something sooner. She saw Linda with that guy multiple times, but didn't know how to bring it up without causing problems." "It's not Sarah's fault. Linda was very good at managing her image,"